Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of Homemade, and today you all, we are making another dessert, but it is a super simple dessert. It is a strawberry roll, and this strawberry roll is made basically the same way that we will make our typical cinnamon roll. The only difference is we're not going to use brown sugar for our filling. We are going to use granulated sugar, and instead of the cinnamon, we are going to be using freeze-dried strawberries. Also, in our filling, we are going to use cream cheese, and that's going to give it that strawberry cream cheese type taste. And you all, this recipe, we are going to be using yeast, and if you're intimidated by using yeast, I promise you, you don't have to be. This recipe, super simple. Our yeast. In this bowl, I do have 1/4 cup of water. I am going to put this into the microwave for 45 seconds. Now, when you are proofing your yeast and you're doing it this way, you want to make sure that your water is not too hot. Even if you're using milk, you want to make sure that is not too hot, because again, if it's too hot, it can kill your yeast. So 45 seconds will bring this water up to the correct temp that we want it to be. You don't want your water to be more than 110 degrees Fahrenheit, because again, it will kill your yeast. Also, we're going to be using 5½ cups of all-purpose flour. To that flour, we are going to add our baking powder, and we're going to add our salt. Another tip, when you're using your salt, I like to go ahead and add it into my flour. I don't like to dump it in separately, because salt can kill your yeast also. So be very mindful of that. In this bowl, I do have 1 cup of granulated sugar, and in this bowl, I have 2 cups of granulated sugar. Now, this sugar we are going to use specifically for our filling. We may not need it all. And this sugar, we are going to use part of it to proof our yeast, and we're going to use the other part to put into our dough. So I have 1 cup and 2 cups, and it's 3 cups total, but you do want to make sure that you separate them. In this bowl right here, I do have 1/3 cup of freeze-dried strawberries that I just mashed up. Now, if you want to use the powder, that is totally fine. But here, I just used 2 bags of the 0.5-ounce freeze-dried strawberries, mashed them up, and I didn't mash them up all the way into powder. Like, you still can see some clumps in there, because it does give the rolls a bit more texture when you leave some of your strawberries into bigger chunks. We're going to use this as our filling, and we're also going to use a little bit of it for our topping. Now, we're going to use most of this for our filling, and we're just going to reserve maybe about 2 tablespoons, if that much, for our topping. Here I have 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese. It is at room temperature. Now, I did cut my cream cheese in half, because we're going to use part of it for our icing, and we're going to use part of it for our filling. Now, also here, I have 1 stick of IMPERIAL Shortening. It is room temperature. We're going to put that inside our dough. I have 1 egg that's room temperature, and I also have 1½ cups of evaporated milk. I don't like to use whole milk when I'm doing my cinnamon roll recipes. The evaporated milk, to me, it just gives it a better texture. If you want to use whole milk or whatever type of milk, that is totally fine. And we are going to use some honey with this, also with our pack of fast rising yeast. Now, the honey, we're going to add that into our water along with our sugar when we pull it out of the microwave to proof our yeast. So let's go ahead and get started. Put this into the microwave for 45 seconds. Come back, and I'm going to show you how to proof your yeast. So I just pulled my water out of the microwave. I did microwave it for 45 seconds. Again, you all, you don't want to go over that 45-second mark, because you don't want to kill your yeast. Into this water, I am going to go ahead and add in my granulated sugar, and I'm also going to add in my honey. Now, for my granulated sugar, I'm going to put about 3 tablespoons in here, and the reason being, the sugar does help activate your yeast. And for my honey, I'm also going to put in 1 tablespoon of honey, and I'm just going to pour my yeast in. Whisk that up, and you all, I'm going to set this aside for about 10 minutes just to let my yeast activate, and we'll come back and work on our dough. If you pull back on the top of it, you can see that it's like a little film on the top. So if that happens, that means that your yeast is active. So I'm going to go ahead, pour this into my mixing bowl, and on my mixer, I do start off with my whisk attachment. I'll add in my tablespoon of baking powder, and I'll add in a 1/2 tablespoon of salt. I'm going to start adding in my flour a little at a time. Now I am going to add in my egg, add in a little of my milk. And I'm going to put in some of my Imperial at this stage. Cut my mixer up just a little. And I'm going to pour in the rest of my milk. And I'm also going to pour in the rest of my cup of granulated sugar. And I'm going to change out attachments at this point. And I'm going to cut this up full speed. I'm going to let this go for about 10 or 15 minutes. And the dough will actually start to pull away from the sides of the bowl a little. And that's how we'll know that it's ready. And for this stage, I like to use my bench scraper because it helps me keep my dough from sticking to the surface. I'm just taking it and I'm folding it over on top of itself. And I'm going to do this probably about 15 or 20 times. I have some non-stick cooking spray. I have my bowl and I'm just going to spray my bowl. I'm going to take this, dump that into my bowl, and I am going to cover this, put it into my oven, let it do the first set of rising for about 20 minutes. It should double in size. I'm going to come back, dump it back out onto my surface. And once I do that, we're going to go ahead and prep our strawberry roll. If you can see, our surface is already floured. I've already sanitized it again. And we're just going to knead our dough. I'm going to roll out my dough. And we're going to start to form our strawberry roll. In this bowl, I have my 4 ounces of cream cheese and my 1 stick of butter. We are going to roll these separately. So it's really important that we get cream cheese and the butter on every part, all the way to the edges. We're going to make sure that our sugar is completely spread all over our dough. We're going to do the same thing with our strawberries. So I just like to cut them straight down after I mark them off. Just use my bench scraper and you're just going to roll that individually. If you get to a spot that's stuck, just use your bench scraper to assist you. We're going to go ahead and cover these again. I want to put them back into my oven while it's off to let them rise for the second stage. It'll only take about 15 minutes. Afterwards, I'm going to cut my oven on to 350. I'm going to let these cook for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I'm going to remove them from the oven. Let them cool for a second, and we are going to put on our cream cheese frosting. Look how awesome they look. These smell so good. And what I like to do is I just like to go in a zigzag motion. You all, it is time for us to sample this goodness. Look at that goodness. Just look at it. Now we're going to go ahead and sample this. And it is so soft. So soft. It is so good. You have to try this. When you try this, make sure you leave your pictures, leave your comments in the comment section below. Let me know how it turned out for you. If you want to keep seeing our easy homemade recipes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our channel. Also, as I always say, cooking is as easy or as hard as you make it. But I promise you, if you keep it simple, just be yourself, life in itself can be so much easier. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Homemade. And until next time, continue to be great.